Captain Ayah Fernandez was prepping for her next deployment at Peterson Air Force Base when her phone buzzed in, unknown number. She picked up hesitantly. "This is the White House. President Trump would like to personally invite you to a Medal of Valor ceremony in D.C." Ayah froze. There had to be a mistake. "No mistake, ma'am, you were nominated for your courage during Operation Blue Ridge." The call ended, leaving her stunned. Pride mixed with unease as painful memories rushed back. Flames, gunfire, a failing helicopter, and her best friend, Lieutenant Rose Mathis, never making it home. Ayah stood still for a long moment, then stepped outside into the cold Colorado air. Looking up at the sky, she whispered, "I'm not ready for this." Later that evening, Ayah sat quietly on her porch, a mug of coffee growing cold in her hands. The invitation echoed in her mind. It wasn't about politics or recognition. It was about Rose. Everyone called Ayah a hero. But she couldn't forget the moment they had to choose who would enter the collapsing building. She had hesitated. Rose had gone in first and never came out. The guilt never left. When Ayah looked at the medal, she didn't see courage. She saw a goodbye that never happened. That night her mother called, thrilled, asking what she'd wear to the ceremony. Ayah replied softly, "Mom, I'm not sure I'm going." There was a pause. "Ayah, this is huge. You should be proud." "I don't know if I deserve it," Ayah said softly. By the next morning, word of her refusal had already begun to spread, first in quiet whispers around the base, then across military blogs. "Air Force Captain declines presidential honor" headlined the chatter, the media speculating everything from political protests to personal reasons. But Ayah had said nothing publicly. In the mess hall, Major Ross sat beside her. "You sure about this? The White House is pushing hard." Ayah nodded gently. "It's just not the right time." Ross gave her a thoughtful look. "Sometimes showing up isn't for you, it's for those who can't." That hit her. She left her tray untouched and walked to the base's memorial wall, stopping at Rose's photo. Her fingers traced the frame. "Is it selfish to stay away?" she whispered. Back in her quarters, Ayah opened her locker and pulled out a weathered envelope, Rose's handwriting unmistakable. A letter she'd left behind in case she didn't return. Ayah had never dared open it. Until now. With trembling hands, she unfolded it. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. Ayah, don't carry the guilt. You led us. You saved us. If anyone deserves to be honored, it's you. Accept that medal, not for me, but for every woman who ever wondered if she belonged in this uniform." Silent tears fell as Ayah held the letter close. For the first time, she thought about saying yes, but doubt still lingered. 2 days later, a sealed envelope arrived, bearing the presidential seal. Inside was a handwritten note. "Captain Fernandez, your courage is beyond commendable. I respect your right to decline. Donald J. Trump. But know that this honor isn't just about one mission. It's about a legacy of bravery. America needs to see leaders like you," the note read. Ayah stared at the words, feeling partly seen yet still burdened. Rose's letter echoed in her mind, but another thought emerged. What would showing up mean for other women in uniform? Her heart still torn, she accepted a last-minute invitation to speak to a group of ROTC cadets. She didn't talk about medals instead. She spoke of fear, loss, and resilience. When a cadet asked, "Ma'am, what's been your hardest decision?" Ayah paused. Refusing an invitation to the White House, she said, drawing gasps, "Because sometimes being called a hero doesn't match how you feel inside." The room fell silent, but their understanding eyes told her she had connected. Someone recorded her speech, and within 48 hours, hashtag Captain AYAH trended globally. Comments flooded in veterans. Students, widows, all calling her honesty the real medal. Her inbox exploded. Ayah was now known not for accepting an award, but for standing in truth. Yet the final decision still weighed on her. Then one quiet evening, a knock came. A woman stood holding a faded photo. "Captain Fernandez?" she asked. Ayah nodded. "I'm Rose's sister." Ayah's breath caught. Elena stepped inside and gently placed a photo on Ayah's table. It showed Rose and Ayah, arms around each other, smiling wide. "She always talked about you," Elena said, eyes glistening. She loved you like a sister. She would have wanted you to accept that medal, but only if it helped you heal. Sat quietly, the weight of those words sinking in. She didn't die because you hesitated, Elena added. She made a choice. That's who she was. Then she handed Ayah a folder. Rose used to write letters to other women in the service. I found these after she passed. She never mailed them. Ayah opened the folder and began reading each. Letter filled with Rose's belief that every woman in uniform deserved to be seen, honored, and valued. I'm just one voice, Ayah whispered. But one voice can echo forever, Elena replied. Ayah stayed up all night reading those letters, and by morning, something had shifted. Standing beneath the Air Force flag, Ayah finally made a public statement. I respectfully declined the White House invitation, not out of protest or pride, but grief. I wasn't ready. But now I realize this recognition isn't just mine. It belongs to every silent hero, every grieving sister, every brave cadet. So today I accept on their behalf. The world listened. Ayah had turned pain into purpose. 3 weeks later, she arrived in Washington, D.C., not in dress blues, but in jeans and a coat. Her first stop was the Women in Military Service for America Memorial, where she placed one of Rose's letters beneath the statue of the unknown servicewoman. Tears welled, but this time they felt like healing. As the sun began to set, she whispered, I'm here, Rose, for you. Before the ceremony, Ayah was invited to a private meeting with President Trump. He extended his hand, smiled, and said, You've stirred the whole country, Captain. I didn't mean to, Ayah said respectfully. But you did by being real, President Trump replied. They sat together and he listened as Ayah spoke not just about missions, but about military grief, forgotten women warriors, and Rose. I didn't earn this alone, she said. The president nodded. And maybe we need to redefine what earning it means. In the grand hall, the crowd buzzed with anticipation as Ayah stood tall, her uniform crisp, eyes steady. When her name was called, applause thundered. She stepped onto the stage, saluted, and accepted the Medal of Valor. But instead of a traditional speech, she pulled a folded letter from her pocket, one of Rosie's, and read it aloud. By the final line, the room was silent, every eye wet with tears. After the ceremony, Ayah announced she would donate the medal to a museum. Beneath a plaque that read, This medal belongs to every woman who served silently, especially Lieutenant Rose Mathis, whose courage shaped mine. The crowd rose to their feet. This was no longer about one medal, it was a movement. Ayah began visiting bases, schools, and VA centers, not to seek recognition, but to share stories of unseen service. At one high school, a girl in an ROTC uniform raised her hand and asked, Do you think someone like me could be in the Air Force? Ayah knelt to the cadet's level and smiled gently. Not only can you'll lead it. On the anniversary of Operation Blue Ridge, she organized a quiet flyover above the mission site and released a single rose from the aircraft. Below, troops stood in solemn silence as the flower drifted down. That night, an old pilot messaged, that rose reached more hearts than 1,000 medals ever could. Back at the White House, President Trump launched a new initiative, the Mathis Fernandez Fellowship for Women Veterans Entering Leadership and Public Service. He personally called Ayah and said, You didn't just wear the uniform, you changed what it means. She thanked him, humbled, but her heart remained with the thousands her story had touched. Inspired by Ayah, Elena founded a nonprofit called Rose Letters, connecting women veterans through handwritten messages of support. One letter at a time, women who had never met began to heal together. Ayah became its first sponsor. The very first Rose letter was sent to a woman grieving her sister's death in Afghanistan. Her reply, This saved me. A year later, Ayah returned to speak to the same ROTC class. The cadet who once asked her the hardest question now stood tall in uniform. Ma'am, I graduate this year. I'm joining because of you. Ayah felt a lump in her throat. Legacy, she realized, wasn't in medals, it lived in the lives she helped shape. That night, Ayah sat at her desk, picked up a pen, and for the first time, wrote a letter not for herself, but for the next young woman searching for her place. Dear future warrior, you'll be afraid, you'll doubt, but know this. You belong. Not because of medals, but because of the heart you carry. Love, Captain Ayah Fernandez. She sealed another rose letter and just like that, her story, their story, continued.